Hello again. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love. They did it again. They did it again. The Tampa Bay Lightning back to their third straight Stanley Cup. And I apologize, but nonetheless, thank you for joining me. If you're new to the podcast, want to see sports review topics, videos, of course, they're on the homepage. Click the description, find that in the corner. But last week on Sports Review Topics, episode 102, I very claimly said that despite them cutting the deficit to 2-1, that it looked like now the New York Rangers were up 2-0, and it really looked like it was a bit of an issue for the Lightning. But, the back-to-back champions did it again. They won 4 straight games, 3 in Tampa Bay, 1 in New York. So, they're going back to face a game Colorado Avalanche team. Now, the Lightning, it's been a who's who of their path to get here. It took them 7 games to get past the Toronto Maple Leafs. They swept the St. Louis Blues, and then they traveled past the New York Rangers after facing adversity, being down 2-0. The Colorado Avalanche are now here. Last year, game moved out quick. This season, this playoffs, winning 3 solid series, culminated in a sweep from the Edmonton Oilers. Now they're here in the Stanley Cup. Couldn't really pick a much better matchup than the Tampa Bay Lightning going for the three-peat against the Colorado Avalanche, going for their first title, I believe, or first Stanley Cup, and I believe. I checked the list of Stanley Cup champions, but I don't know if Colorado has won. Now, I don't watch a lot of hockey, but I was invested for the Stanley Cup games as much as I could, but I may be wrong in that regard, but nonetheless, it should be a fun series between the two teams. Tampa could certainly do it. We've seen it the last 2 playoffs. They just roll through and make it and win all. And, you know, I already mentioned, but they were the catalyst for the Tampa Bay sports. With them, then of course, Brady, the Devil Rays. I mean, it's going to be interesting how, regardless of the result, how it affects the other teams currently in the mode. But game 1 is Wednesday, quite a bit of a gap, and more rest for Colorado, who swept Edmonton, and Tampa Bay took 6 games against New York. So curious to see how it goes. But as a person who resides in New Mexico, I have a soft spot for Colorado. So see how it goes. But anything can happen. What did happen, however, is 2 of the best wide receivers in the game today in the NFL got very solid paydays, and they deserved it. Let's start with the less obvious. Though Hunter Renfrow, I want to go over Renfrow because, he has been a very, he's not, he and Mike Evans really have much in common. Mike Evans has had a 1,000 yards season receiving every season that he's been in the league. Hunter and Mike Evans does not say a word. He's not outspoken. He pretty much just puts his head down, does his business, and gets results. Hunter Renfrow is much the same qualities, Now, Renfrow wasn't a top 5 pick like Mike Evans. He was a mid to late round pick in 2019, but Hunter Renfrow very much deserved this extension. 2 years, $32 million, which now he's under contract for 3 more seasons going into the final year of his rookie deal. But deserved for Renfrow, he came close. I know Timmy Brown was feeling it. He came close to breaking Tim Brown's single season receptions record for the Raiders last season. But nonetheless, Renfrow has been a game part of their offense. And, with Davante Adams on the other side, it's only going to enhance Renfrow. And very good stuff, along with his quarterback, Derek Carr, who got a nice extension as well early in the offseason. And for anyone who's watched the podcast the last couple of weeks, knows that I would not be shocked to see the black and silver up on the stage come February. They got the talent, and Crosby got his extension. Davante Adams got traded and got his new deal. with the Raiders. Derek Carr got an extension. Now Hunter Renfrow got an extension. So they have been busy much in Las Vegas this offseason. Okay, now let's get to the obvious one, Cooper Kupp. You know, this definitely deserved. Definitely. 3 years, $80 million deal. You know, $75 million guaranteed. You know, Cooper Kupp had, this may be controversial to some, but, and some may see recency bias, and yes, I didn't see any of Jerry Rice's phenomenal years with the 49ers, but even when he did well with the Raiders, but Cooper Kupp had the best season for a wide receiver I've ever seen last season. I mean, Triple Crown winner, almost over 2,000 yards receiving in total from the regular season and so on. The playoffs, you know, made the 2 catches that won them versus the Buccaneers when it looked like it was falling apart. Then they beat the 49ers in Slugfest. Super Bowl MVP, the game-winning touchdown when all was on the line. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, they got it done. So this was very much deserved for Cooper Kupp. And, you know, you can't say enough. And now, with all these enhancements now getting done, you know, they acquire Allen Robinson. They pay Aaron Donald more money. He's going to be on the contract for 3 more years, obviously, but more money, as, you know, he deserves. Cooper Kupp gets an extension. Matthew Stafford got an extension. I know what people are thinking. I mean, Sean McVay got married last week, but, you know, OBJ seems like it's the last piece of the puzzle fall in place back in. And I still don't know why they're not favored. I mean, I get it that a Super Bowl champion is not repeated in the last 18 seasons. Or 17, 18, whichever. But you look at who the Rams had last season. They re-signed all of their big pieces, all of their core. Jalen Ramsey, you know, you can say was the only one of the core that did not get an extension. He still has his deal. You know, they let Von Miller, yes, go to the Bills. But as far as, say, Andrew Whitworth retiring, and, you know, they trade Robert Woods to the Titans, there's not a lot of subtraction that went on with the Rams this offseason. Now, of course, circumstances are subject to change, but I don't know why the Rams. I don't see much of a reason why they shouldn't be favored to repeat this season. I mean, looking at the landscape of the NFC right now, it's almost, it's pretty much a blur. I mean, you have the Cowboys, and, people know my feelings on the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I mean, Packers, Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers is signed. Okay. Tampa, of course, running it back with Brady. But they were swept by the Rams last season. You know what I mean? You got the Cardinals, you got the Saints, you got the 49ers, but nobody looks, besides the Bucs, nobody looks like a great test, really, for the Rams this season. Now, they did lose to the Packers, but last season, but they did get swept in the regular season by the 49ers, but it is not no one looks like a legitimate test for the Rams as it looks right now. But go for Cooper Kupp, the Super Bowl MVP, and hopefully it's not the last time we see Cooper Kupp. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he wins another Super Bowl MVP before his time is up in the NFL. UFC 275 culminated on Saturday night. It's been a bit. It's been a minute since I've covered UFC news or a pay-per-view in general. But this one was pretty interesting. Pretty interesting down the road in their return to Singapore since really before the pandemic. And great to see. And had some thrilling finishes and a newsworthy moment. But headlined by Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka, and only his third fight in the UFC at 29 years old. Czech fighter, against Glover, who won the title from Jan Blachowicz at 42 years old. Does his moment continue, or would Yuri put an end to it? Well, the outcome was very interesting, but I'll get to in a bit. We also had another championship fight in the co-main event. We had Valentina Shepchenko versus Talia Santos, and a intriguing rematch. Sean Welly versus Joanne Jacek. This had a very uplifting finish. I certainly did not expect that to how it went, considering how well their first fight went. many dubbing it the best women's fight in the UFC. Their first fight with Zhang Weili versus Joanne. But this fight here, both trying to get up on the horse. Joanna's been kind of so-and-so since losing her title to Rose Namajunas. Zhang felt the same path when losing to Rose, but only one could move past or move on. Zhang Weili, it's not often we see a spinning back fist make a finish in the UFC, but Zhang Weili definitely showed it. Face planted Joanna in the second round. Weili is tough. Weili's tough. And, she is certainly a tone setter. She's tough. She has good striking. She got caught with a head kick against Rose. And she wins twice against Joanna. Joanna, as far as Joanna goes, well, I would not be shocked if we see a rematch now, as it appears to Rose, Namajunas, and Zhang Weili. I mean, Zhang could very well get her belt back. Very well, but we'll see. Rose, we know, is tough as well. Well, actually, Rose lost the title to Carla Esparza. My bad. I had a brain fart there. But Carla Esparza won the title, and her rematch with Rose. So, I mean, we could very well see Carla Esparza versus Zhang Weili. But, I mean, that fight was very uneventful. So, I mean, can you really blame me for having a brain fart about that? I mean, but yeah, Carla Esparza versus Zhang Weili, maybe where the fight is headed next direction. As far as Joanna, in kind of surprising fashion, she announced her retirement after the fight, after getting knocked out. Now, we've seen a lot of retirements in the UFC not be definitive. So, I mean, now Joanna's in her mid-30s. She's taken a lot of punishment the last couple fights. But it's certainly one with caution. Now, Joanna actually, of course, beat Esparza to become the second ever women's strawweight champion. But I mean, and she carried it for a long time. And, she's a bit of a character in herself, Joanna. Now, obviously, things took a turn when she lost to Rose in MSG. But, nonetheless, Joanne has had a very good career nonetheless in the UFC. I mean, very well-rounded fighter, and you know, if this is it for her, it's been a solid run. It's been a solid run for Joanna. It's just the last couple fights have not gone to her liking, and that's the way it goes. But it's unfortunate. But yeah, hats off to Zhang Weili, and perhaps she gets a Sparta next and her next outing. And I mean, they return to Singapore for this fight. Perhaps they could do it again. I mean, it makes sense for the champion, but since Carl is the champion, Weili probably has to beat her in order for her to get a championship fight in her home country, but we'll see. We'll see. Co-main events. We had Valentina Shepchenko, who has pretty much been the staple of the women's bantamweight division. I mean, she has been really the numero uno. I just mentioned Joanne Jacek. She's pretty much been on that run that Joanne has had since she won the title. Now, it's always going to be a question of who is the one to take it away, but I mean, Valentina, she's great on the ground. She's great striker, She took some punishment, though, and it was not easy for Talia Santos, who's game. But Valentina edged it out, won a split decision to retain her belt against Talia Santos, who apparently broke her elbow bone. But nonetheless, good outing by Talia and Valentina. It's gonna be a test to see who finally knocks her off the mountain. We'll see. We'll have to see, because Juliana Pena, of course, won her fight, obviously choking out Amanda Nunes, and they're going to have a rematch. But I would not be surprised if, assuming Julia Pena beats Amanda Nunes again, that, we perhaps get a rematch of Julia Pena versus Valentina Shevchenko. And of course, Valentina submitted Pena in their first fight, so I mean, a little bit of redemption possibly for Juliana. We'll see. But that could be in the works. Main events. Ay. So, it was the 42-year-old Glover Teixeira. In his first title defense after choking out Jan Blachowicz to be the second oldest champion in UFC history for a title win, but up against a game and a fairly new Yuri Prochazka. This was only his third fight in the UFC. I mean, and he's been impressive as long as he's been in the UFC. He knocked out Volkan Ozdemir, who we know how dangerous Volkan can be. And then he knocked out Dominic Reyes with a beautiful spinning back elbow. And I mean, how would Glover be able to solve this puzzle? He did a fairly decent job, and we saw wrinkles to Yuri's game, which I mean, obviously was disappointed at his performance, but it went hand in hand as with 28 seconds left in the fight, Yuri Prochazka got Glover down and submitted him with a modified rear naked choke, almost like a bulldog choke, but nonetheless, Yuri Prochazka got the finish, got the dub, and he is the new UFC light heavyweight champion. Glover's story fairy tale came to an abrupt end, but was, great how it lasted. He says he's gonna still fight, and he looks like he can still do it at his 40s at high level. It'll be intriguing to see how they go next. I mean, Yuri, does Glover get a rematch? Or does Jan Blachowicz get his rematch? Or do we do a rematch between Jan and Glover, and the winner gets Yuri next? I mean, there are a few possibilities of what they could do next for the UFC light heavyweight title, but Glover, despite being in his 40s, can still get done at a high level. He just came up short and was this close to retaining his belt and moving on with the strap, but it's how it goes sometimes. But nonetheless, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. That was it for today, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, click the like button, help out the video. Again, if you want to see more of these videos, you can click in the description box in the corner. But can't wait for Game 5 of the Celtics and the Warriors NBA Finals. See how it goes in San Fran, but we'll see how it goes. But nonetheless, I'll see you guys next week for episode 104. It's a strange time in sports with the summer. We have hockey towards the end, basketball towards its end. We're starting to gear towards training camp and preseason for the NFL. I mean, the MLB's, still in the midst of their season, so it's a weird time in the summer for the sports, but nonetheless, we'll power through it. But of course, I'm Ajoe21love. Thank you all for joining me. I'm getting out of here. See y'all next week. Peace.